All right. Good evening, everybody. We will start the November 8th finance meeting. I am here. Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Watson is here, and sitting in for Deputy Mayor Carter is Councilmember Swatman. Thank you for joining us today. We'll start with item number 1, personnel update with Brian.
Yes, I did send out the update. I could pass it around the room in case you get one, but we have one hire. Kyle Morrison was promoted to mechanic 2. We do have a county specialist starting on November 16th, so we're happy that we got that one filled. Opening up, we just opened up a maintenance worker 1-2 in the water. That's internally, and then it could go out externally after that. We have Parks Lead interviews coming up on the 10th. We recently had city engineer interviews and are back for second interviews in that improvement. Assistant Public Works Superintendent, we did get around 23 applications, that one, and are looking at moving 17 forward for the hiring manager to review that. One item on here that not included, John pointed out, the upcoming separation, Weist? Yeah, the recreation coordinator separating on November 14th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
No, good.
Getting filled. Good job.
All right, thank you. We'll go now into business action items. Item number 1, AB 22-155, authorizing out-of-state travel. Dina?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Evans. So this is a proposal for Ms. Paul, the Admin Specialist 3, to attend an out-of-state conference, the National Institute of Crime Prevention, Domestic Violence, and Sexual Assault Training in Las Vegas, Nevada from December 5th to the 7th. I wanted to just explain a little bit of background. So a domestic violence case, a DV designation can be added to any type of crime. Traditionally, we associate this with like an assault 4th degree case, like a hitting, pushing, choking, or malicious mischief 3rd degree, like punching a wall or window, slamming a person's phone on the ground, smashing a car window. But the DV designation can be added to any case, such as animal cruelty, theft, trespassing. It can be added to any case when the victim and defendant are intimate partners, current or former spouses, parents of a child in common, are currently living together or have lived together, or family or household members. So for example, a mother-daughter, father-son, or 2 brothers or 2 sisters could also be a case where we have a domestic violence designation. In 2021, year to date, I have updated numbers. The Bonney Lake Police Department had responded to 73 cases at this point. For current year to date, we're at 101. So the number of DV cases is continuing to increase, especially when compared to last year. While not all the cases that the police department responds to eventually come to our office, some of them do get prosecuted as a felony. Oftentimes they may go to Pierce County to be charged as a felony initially, and Pierce County declines, and then they come to our office as a misdemeanor. Additionally, our office supports the Bonney Lake Police Department, so if a police officer has a question about domestic violence cases in general, it's our office that provides all of the training and resources to the Bonney Lake Police Department. What does a domestic violence advocate do? While our office does not have a DV advocate, like similar prosecutor's offices, Ms. Paul has stepped up to perform these duties. This can include like crisis intervention, providing information and referrals to domestic violence victims for shelters, discussing the protection order and no contact order process, explaining the criminal justice system and how the prosecution process works, what it's like to participate in the criminal justice process, and just general guidance and support, and being a person that these people can call and talk to. Additionally, domestic violence advocate does not just work with the victim, they also participate in the community in terms of education, training court staff, and also training law enforcement.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does that differ from our computer downstairs?
So you
'Cause
can't,
I don't,
so you can't call the computer downstairs.
so they go in
And-
and they go online, they need to call. Is that, all
So
I know is there and they can, so it was, okay,
The DV kiosk downstairs is for someone to request a protection order only.
okay.
Right.
So
I
it's
didn't
not
know
a
that.
reasons for someone to talk to anyone
I
or
thought it was
anything
connect
like
with
that.
somebody in the county.
No.
It's
Okay.
county court that runs it, and right now it's completely turned off
Yeah.
because the county is revamping everything, and they don't want anyone to use the kiosk right now.
Okay,
right. So if a victim is being interviewed by a defense attorney, they can't go ask the kiosk, like, what are my rights when I'm interviewed
well,
by
I
defense
just thought they
attorney.
would have a connection with someone that assists them out here. I didn't
And that's
know
a
that.
really good question. I've reached out to a lot of other agencies about like, hey, we don't have a DV advocate. What kind of support can you provide Bonney Lake? And the response has been they cannot come here and help a victim. They can't help a victim
That's too bad.
present a statement at sentencing. They won't attend an interview with a victim. So, you know, if a victim's being interviewed by the defense attorney, they have the right to have a DV advocate present during that interview. And the neighboring agencies are not providing that resource. That's a resource that our office has to provide. If they have questions about the criminal justice process and what their rights are throughout the entire process, and some of our cases can take a year or two to prosecute just to get to a resolution, they have a person that they need to call and talk to. And additionally, sometimes there's the cycle of domestic violence, right after the incident happens, maybe they're willing to participate. Then they kind of go back to that honeymoon phase. And then maybe there's another incident that happens. They need somebody that they can call and talk to that they feel comfortable talking to. And that's Ms. Paul. That's Carol. That's who these people call and talk to. The other thing that happened was in the summer of 2022, the victim rights laws in Washington were changed. They were increased. So that's RCW 7.69.030. So our office has a duty as the prosecuting office to make sure that all of those rights are maintained. So a victim has the right to be informed of the final disposition of a case. This can mean calling them, sending them a letter. They have the right to receive protection from harm and threats of harm arising out of the cooperation with law enforcement and the prosecution efforts, and to be provided information as to the level of protection available. They have the right to be informed of the procedure to apply for and receive any witness fees to which they are entitled. They have the right to a secure waiting area during court proceedings that's not in close proximity to defendants or family or friends or the attorney of the defendant. They have a right to a crime victim advocate to be present at any prosecution or defense interviews. They also have the right to be informed of the date, time, and place of the trial and the sentencing hearing. They also have the right to submit a victim impact statement or report to the court with the assistance of the prosecuting attorney. And that can include them showing up in person and reading something in the record, or maybe they write a letter that we then present to the court. And that's a brand new right that we have to make sure that they're aware of, and that's they have the opportunity to exercise that right if they choose to. And that can also mean meeting with them and walking them through the process of what they can tell the court.
You're doing this, or Ms. Paul is doing this, or you're doing combined?
For the most part, it's been Ms. Paul doing it.
Okay. I didn't really do that.
And they also have, so while Ms. Paul's not a DV advocate, she's
Right.
in Specialist 3, she stepped up to help our office make sure that these rights are, I guess, maintained. And, I hear this said a lot at council meetings, and one way you could say it would be this is in a way an unfunded mandate, and this training that we're proposing Ms. Paul to go to is going to help make sure that we're doing the best we can with the staff that we have to make sure these victim rights are honored, and also by making sure these victims have a person to go to that helps explain the process. That helps victims want to participate more in the justice system.
How many cases a year do you get about?
So there's no way for us to track the exact number of DV cases that we get per year because we don't have the electronic software for that. But the police department's getting over 100 a year. So it's safe to say that we probably have a similar number. Once we get our prosecutor by carpel software, we'll be able to track the exact number that have the DV designation. And the other thing I'll say is that victims who are participating, they can need a lot of hand holding through the process because it's a really difficult process. So by sending Ms. Paul to this training, it's really going to help ensure that we are doing not only just meeting the bare minimum of what's statutorily required, and also that we're doing the best we can to make sure these victim rights are protected, and in turn also support the police department, because every time a police officer goes out to one of these domestic violence incidents, they're risking their life to help protect the community. And so we want to make sure that we do our best to make sure that these cases are prosecuted to the best of our ability and also meeting the statutory requirements.
Does the statutory requirement state exactly what we have to do?
Yes, in the RCW.
Well, I'm looking over it right now, but it doesn't say how we have to do that, right? I'm also looking at, what is this? The Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence website, and they show for Pierce County over a dozen different resources here. Abused Deaf Women's Advocacy Services, Catherine's Place, Family Renewal Shelter, Korean Women's Association, Northwest Family Life Learning Council Center, Our Sister's House, Puyallup Tribe of Indians Domestic Violence Advocacy Program, Tacoma Community House, YWCA.
Right, so those organizations exist and they are really great organizations, but none of them will call a victim or mail a letter to a victim saying the pretrial hearing's on Monday. None of them will contact a victim and say the defense wants to have an interview. I'll sit in with you during the interview. None of them will walk a victim through how to prepare and write a statement that they want to read at sentencing. None of them will make sure that the victim, when they're testifying, has a secure waiting area away from the defendant and the defendant. So they exist and they have their own mission, but none of them will come out here to do the things that our office is doing.
Okay. And what you're stating is just all of the bare minimum requirements. That's not above and beyond what the law is stating.
Correct.
Okay. And then for the out-of-state travel, I sent you an email on Sunday about the online. It seems like if we're that slammed in our department, sending someone away for a week versus doing the, trying to find it here, got a lot of open links, through the same National Institute of Crime Prevention for a fraction of the cost, less than 10% or around 10% of the cost, and take the same online course as what's offered in Vegas.
Right. So what I find through attending on in-person training is that one of the most beneficial things, like I just recently went to the Wasama training out in Wenatchee, and it's all the connections that a person makes is one of the really valuable things. They can connect with other DV advocates and other people that are in other prosecutors' offices. So when they have a unique issue that comes up, they already have that connection. They can also find out how other offices, what processes they have, what software they have, what they're doing. And my personal experience has been, I don't get that from an online training. And so you can go these in-person trainings, you can find out, wow, everybody's using X software to track Y, and we don't have that. We should probably look into getting that and the benefits of it. And additionally, making those connections. Also, I talked to Ms. Paul about the online option and just her personal learning style. She's going to college right now and she chose specifically to go to in-person college versus going to the online college that would have been free through the AFSCME union contract, because she learns best in that in-person environment. So I think for us to get, for the city and for the victims and the police department to get the best benefit out of the training would be to do an in-person training.
And despite Ms. Paul's stepping up for this role, we would be sending a non-DV advocate to this DV advocacy course training.
Correct, because we do not have a DV advocate.
Okay. You guys have any questions on
What
it?
have we done in the past before?
So
Is this something all we've changed?
So it's two things. One was when I came on board, I realized that there were some gaps in terms of communication with victims. So I said, hey, we need to make sure from the old RCW version that we're in statutory compliance. And then in summer of this year, the RCW was changed to create even more rights Originally, a lot of these rights were for felony-only victims, and then they expanded to all victims of domestic violence or violent crime, including at the misdemeanor level. So this change in the RCW from the summer triggered additional things that our office has to make sure that we're doing in terms of victim outreach and victim communication.
Because we always ask, what would happen if we didn't?
That's a great question. So what would happen if we didn't? Well, one, a lot of victims wouldn't get as much communication from our office, or maybe wouldn't, necessarily be as communicated with, or necessarily by going to these trainings, you learn how to really work with victims and learn how to speak to them in a way where they don't feel judged and they feel more willing to be vulnerable with that person, and they're more willing to participate in the criminal justice process. So if we don't do this training, one, we wouldn't potentially be in statutory compliance, but additionally, victims may not be as willing to participate in the criminal justice system, which then means more cases are dismissed, which then means the police officers get called out to that same apartment, that same house over and over again, which means they can't go to another call, means they're putting their lives at risk every time they go out. If we do this, hopefully that means we can more robustly prosecute, and that means the defendant is more likely to have to go to that, DV, get a domestic violence evaluation, go to domestic violence treatment, and can stop that, cycle of abuse, which means the police officers aren't going out there time and time again. It could also mean that maybe that victim finally is able, through our office, to be connected with like the resources you mentioned earlier, to know those resources exist, and maybe they can sever themselves from that abusive relationship.
So besides the networking and learning about software and what others might be doing across the state, is there anything that our victims would lose out on if Ms. Paul did the online course versus an in-person course?
Well, I don't think that from talking to Ms. Paul that it would be that. So are you saying I don't know if that's going to be a conducive learning environment from talking to Ms. Paul.
Do you not take any online courses? None
I
here?
did over COVID, and
Oh,
I
okay.
just didn't do as well.
So are we creating a whole new position that in 2 years you're going to say that she needs to be full-time and we need to hire another staff member? Is that what you?
I've already
Are we
said
going-
that. Yeah. Yeah, I've already asked for that. Previously, that's not happening, but that's my position.
I'm
Is
just
that
wondering where
that's,
we're-
yeah.
And that's something to be negotiated in future union stuff?
Yeah.
Not, okay. Dan, you got anything? Tom, you got any
Well,
other thoughts?
I see it both ways. I agree with you, and I also agree with sometimes the first time, especially compared to our training skill adjustment, the first year or two might be was informative for us. After that, it kind of gets the same more repetitive business. So this is so new to her, and other people doing the same type of things. I think she would benefit more from it, especially if she can do so well online, and she would see what's going on, and maybe in the long run save us some time and other efforts we weren't doing if she had some hands-on experience talking to people that are doing it right. I would agree to do it this time,
Okay.
maybe not in the future.
You've done a great job answering all my
Yeah.
questions, and so I keep my cards close to the vest, but I'm in line with Tom on this. That as much as I try and look out for the people's money, I do believe that Ms. Paul will get a better benefit in person from this than she would online, and I can support that. Very good. All right. Consent agenda then?
It's already on tonight's consent.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Lucky for you.
Good answers to
We don't have to print any new stuff. No, I'm kidding. And have fun in Vegas. All right. Thank you so much. We'll go back to our agenda. We'll move to business action item number 2, AB 22-156, 2023 COLA and benefits changes for non-represented employees. John.
Yeah, this is a proposed 1.5% cost of living adjustment for non-represented employees affected. Also, the establishment voluntary employees.
Yeah, what is that? Is
Okay.
that like a
It's
non-union
like a-
union?
No, it's like
Okay.
a non-tax health savings.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
It's an HRA.
Okay. National Hot Rod Association?
Yes.
So Kurt,
No. Health reimbursement account.
Okay.
Is that the government's version of an HSA? Or?
No, it's different than an HSA. An HSA, FSA, and HRA. HRA is you can keep through life, and it actually would follow you. So
Yeah, right.
I'll use John as an example. If John were to have an HRA, he retires, and he unfortunately were to die the next day, it would go on to his beneficiaries, and then their beneficiaries. Sorry, John. I hope that doesn't happen, but I had to come up with an example here. An HSA would not do that. They're different. So health savings account versus a health retirement account.
Oh, okay.
and the Viva account for ASPE employees was bargained and it will be established.
So that's just matching that,
Yes.
basically? Okay.
And as you know, I mean, the COLAs for represented employees are already settled for 2023. AFSCME is 2.5%, and then our 3 police guilds.
The benefit of the VBUD, it goes in tax-free and goes out tax-free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see your wheels turning, Dan. So that's their
Slowly.
tagline.
Slowly.
From an
She's
accountant,
here,
I
Dan.
know. I saw him. An accountant wouldn't say it goes in tax-free and comes out tax-free because really it's never hitting the employee's paycheck, right? So you're never going to tax it. It's going straight in, and we're not paying tax on it. So HRA, Viva, that's the kind of their tagline. Oh, it's tax-free, but yeah, you get what I'm saying.
All right. Anyone have any concerns with that going on to the consent agenda for the November 22nd meeting?
Good to me.
Well, I'm wondering about why they came up with such a low. I'm not supposed to ask that.
Oh, you certainly can, but then they're going to come back and say, oh, we could have got more.
Well, unfortunately, the economic realities of the cost of, this inflationary period that we're in. I understand that they're probably kind of trying to match with what the union.
Yeah, we wanted to keep something that was in line with what our
they use that as
collective
kind of the
bargaining.
gatekeeper. But yet, if I'm a professional employee, I'm looking at this like
You can change the
CPI or
number.
whatever, right?
You can change
No,
the
I'm
number.
just the economic. I don't know how that works. Is what the management was thinking because.
So we took into account, the cost of the Viva, which
Sure.
is not significant. It's not insignificant. $55 a month. Please. So that combined with the 1.5%, close to what represents.
Plus what we did last year was a pretty significant increase. So
But if you're doing how does that with CPI or inflation rate or
it's not tied to it.
yeah, no, of course not. But when an employee's like, all right, you're trying to figure out how to live, and your cost of everything around you has been inflated or not by 8 or 9% or something like that, possibly. And then your employer comes along and says, here's 1.5%, or aren't you as an employee thinking it's screwed? I don't know.
1.5%, I'd be pretty damn happy.
I don't know how that works.
I don't get a COLA.
If we change it, would that be a problem with the guild then too?
Well, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah,
the other
no,
thing
The
too. Right?
guild and the AFSCME contracts are set. So
Right.
there's nothing
Yeah,
that requires.
but they're
us to
going to
go
come
back.
back, of course, smartly the other years
Next
and say,
time.
"Hey, wait a
Yeah,
minute."
certainly.
down
And
the
all,
road.
all 4 of them are up, at the end of 23.
Right, that
So,
was my concern.
wage increases for the next series of collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah,
Been going for that for a couple of
I
years.
don't know.
now,
You
so
guys,
we'll see.
you've been dealing with this.
Well, I see what
years
you're
and I
saying.
have, so I
You're
don't
you're
know.
talking the extended compression over time, that this and this and this will eventually result in what we just had to do last year, which is
Yeah, and then I don't know if that was part of the thinking where it was like, well, wait a minute, we just the wages already, so this is really what we would normally give as a
Well, we
fair.
approved a survey for next year coming up on this. So that's,
Yeah.
I think we should wait and see what that comes back. And if we need to make an adjustment, we can always do that next year.
Yeah, that's
saying leave
Oh,
this
wait,
as it.
can I-
leave it
Alone.
as
And
Can
jump in
I
there.
exercise? Yeah. I'd like to exercise my professional, what was that, Dan?
Sure. There you go. Yeah,
my-
you're the expert.
My No, I'm kidding. 20% across the board.
Yeah, that would be a little bit much, right? Yeah.
I'll see you figure that one out and make it work
Yeah.
out.
That seems like a significant cut, but I'll support it.
That's a significant.
So consent for 26th? We'll look
Yeah.
at what the study brings back for the rest.
Yep. Change that if we need to.
Yeah, that's what it shows on there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Tom, any changes in the meetings for item
Nope.
3?
Nope, they're
Meeting
good.
minutes?
Perfect.
All right. Now down to the open discussion. Anyone for the good or the order?
Yeah, I do. So I was reached out to by Councilmember Watson, and he and Councilmember Swatman received a letter from a citizen about the tax levy. So I didn't know if you guys wanted to have a quick conversation. We used to talk about it at the Finance Committee. Leslie and I talked about it, and it wasn't on last year's Finance Committee, so we just took it off of this year's. But we can certainly add it back next time if that's what you'd prefer. Basically, same thing as always. We're asking for the 1% increase, and it's equals about $35,000.
And you're always a no on that, right?
No, does it have that super weird clause in it?
It does not. It does not. So Dan's usually a yes as long as that weird clause is not in there.
Right.
What's the weird clause?
Where it's the banking clause or what?
No, so it has to do with an implicit price deflator when inflation is less than the 1%, and we're asking for it to go above the IPD. It very rarely happens, but it did happen, what was that, about 4 or 5 years ago? Yeah, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And he said he'll always be a no for trying to use IPD. So we are not using IPD this time.
All right. Cool. Anyone else for anything we got?
We're good.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Easy one.
See you in 30 minutes
Thank you,
downstairs.
everybody. Thank you, Sherry. See you soon.
See you soon.